My name is Garland Morrison. I'm expressing my views on the current political scene being played out across America and in the media. Never in all my years have I seen the news media so openly hostile to an elected official, especially the newly elected President of the United States. He is the first politician I have ever seen that set out right from the start to fulfill all the promises he made to the people of the United States. The protesting and rioting across this country sickens and disgusts me. And leading the mob are actors and actresses who are nothing more than professional pretenders, some of whom promised to leave the USA. We're still waiting for that. If Donald Trump were elected President of the United States. A few of these are held up as shining examples of women's rights, but in reality are nothing more than skanks and foul-mouthed entertainers. Chelsea Handler. I can't believe that the educated and laureled masses still believe the mainstream media after they misled you so easily during the election and are still doing it now. It's not news anymore. It's propaganda. The media tells you Donald Trump is anti-immigrant, when in reality he has never said anything disparaging about immigrants. He is married to one. Only illegal immigrants, who by definition are already breaking the law. They have told you he is anti-Muslim, when in reality he has never uttered a word against Muslims, only extremist Islamic terrorists who are Muslim. His travel ban against 7 predominantly Muslim countries does not affect any other country with large Muslim populations. Egypt, Israel, Turkey, Jordan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, just to name a few. The reasoning given for the ban was completely logical. Those countries are not providing reliable information for their citizens wanting to travel to the USA. Illegal immigrants to this country commit crimes and use resources meant for our citizens. They burden the system without contributing. It costs this country millions, if not hundreds of millions, of dollars every year directly related to this problem, and uses funds that could go to education, health, veterans benefits, and infrastructure, just to name a few. I have personally spoken with several European Union citizens who expressed great dismay and extreme agitation in regards to recent immigration of refugees. Their description of how that was going was very unflattering and said with a tone of urgency and hostility. I have spoken with people working in Alaska who lived along our southern border and couldn't compete with workers from Mexico. They had to come to Alaska to find a job. I met several carpenters whose last job was disconnecting and crating up factory equipment to be shipped to Mexico and used there. It's disheartening to hear these stories from my fellow blue-collar deplorables. They call him racist. I don't believe I've ever heard him make a racist comment or be accused of using the N-word, and rest assured the mainstream media has dug deep for that, just like they have everything else, if they don't flat out make it up. Just look at what happened to Paula Deen. They call him sexist. Yes, we've all heard the audio from the dead mic, which I'm sure the mainstream media had teams of people going through every second of audio and video for the last 20 years to find anything bad. And I can assure you, men and women say much worse every day to each other regarding the opposite sex, or even the same sex, whenever they gather in the locker room, around the water cooler, in the shop, to yak. But in reality, he has always promoted women's abilities and rights. His daughter and his campaign manager are perfect examples of that. The mainstream media tells you that he is anti-LGBT, when in reality he had a gay man on his campaign team, and I have never heard him make any homophobic statements. So where does all this animosity come from? I have heard interviews with learned professors who talk about Trump's ability to lead the mob. Now we're not just deplorables, we're a mob also. How did our educators become so politicized and then take it upon themselves to pass their viewpoints on to our children? I thought education was about the 3 R's and not about forwarding your personal political viewpoint. If that's what's going on in our public schools, I would seriously consider putting my children, if I had any that needed to be put in school, in a private school where I had more say about what they are taught. Religion and politics are the domain of parents, not teachers. They have told you the new administration is conflicting with its own intelligence organization. In reality, these are the same people who told a previous administration about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which directly led to the Second Gulf War, costing this country thousands of dead and wounded and hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars that could have been used here in the USA, building schools, roads, hospitals, bridges, and power plants, putting millions of Americans to work. Now what do we have? ISIS, who has pledged and bragged about infiltrating the USA by hiding fighters amongst the refugees. The fighting there needs to be stopped and let those people go home, not scatter them across the globe. This country is in debt up to our grandchildren's eyeballs, and it is about time someone got in there determined to set things right and get our fiscal house in order. Not everyone will be happy with how it's done, but no one will ever make everyone happy. The sad thing about it is, those of you who voted the other way are so upset, so blinded by their collective loss, and the mainstream media helped bring that about, by the way, that you won't even give the new president of the United States a chance, or let him do what he promised to do, and maybe even try to help. Acting like adults would be a good start. Heaven help us if he were to succeed, which would benefit everyone, and prove that he was the right choice and the perfect individual for the job, which would invalidate the choice of all the liberals, sore losers, and crybabies. Now I wish to reflect on the latest mainstream media flap, which they went out of their way to blow up, regarding Nordstrom and its decision to stop carrying Ivanka Trump's line of clothing and accessories. They make the statement that sales were slow and that's why they dropped the line, which is a perfectly legitimate reason. What I find interesting is the way they went about announcing it, which to me was totally political. I doubt they make such a public announcement for every line they drop. And then you get publicity seekers, like that foul-mouthed skank Chelsea Handler, who wants to parade around the White House with her Nordstrom bags, proclaiming herself and friends Jew, gay, and black. Is she totally clueless? She doesn't know the president's son-in-law is Jewish and his daughter converted to Judaism? That he just appointed Ben Carson to his cabinet? That one of his campaign team is openly gay? And of course, all of you liberal sore losers flock to her post, praising her as a shining example of women's rights and resistance to the new administration. Really? Have any of you ever watched her show? And since I'm talking about worthless celebrities who think their opinion matters more than the rest of us, and I will mention another. Yes, that's right, I'm talking about Madonna, who traveled to Washington, D.C., and stood there at the podium and expressed her desire to blow up the White House. The People's House, one of the great symbols of our democracy, one that thousands of American men and women have died for protecting our freedoms and right to assemble and express ourselves freely. You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm sure the rest of us would have had a visit from the Secret Service or some other law enforcement agency for questioning. Hopefully, she moves back to Europe. In summary, I find that those who supported the opposition candidate that lost are so immersed in their defeat they cannot put aside our differences and help contribute to America's success. Instead, they would prefer to see the new administration fail. And the rest of us, the deplorable blue-collar mob, Americans all, fail also, which means America fails. They would rather see higher unemployment, greater poverty, and rising inflation just so they can say, see, we were right. As a great former president once said, ask not what your country can do for you, rather ask what you can do for your country.